have a number of questions in relation to the FIFA scandal, the FFA and related matters in terms of... Now, I need some help from you, Chair. Do I refer to it as football or soccer for the purpose of this hearing?
Well, I think these days they like to be referred to as football, even if we grew up with soccer. So you go with whichever you prefer.
Not that old. I'm much older than you, Chair. I'll refer to it as football, but we know what we're talking about. Is it fair to say that football is a sport with high participation rates that is also an Olympic sport receives via the FFA a relatively large amount of government support compared to other sports that either don't have such high participation rates in this country or aren't Olympic sports? And if you could please keep your answers short, and if you have to elaborate on notice, because...
Jay Smith, Acting First Assistant Secretary, Office for Sport. Senator, just to clarify, you're seeking information about the funding football receives relative to other sports?
Yes. Do you want to take that on notice?
The Sports Commission is the only government body that currently funds football for participation. The Sports Commission will need to answer that question in terms of FFA's funding received.
So do we need to... Are there going to be a few for the Sports Commission? Or do we need to maybe bring
the Sports Commission here?
Yes. Can we just have both up? No, perhaps stay. I think it might be simpler.
Yeah. Because there'll be some issues that relate to it.
We can bring the Sports Commission to the table because we might be going back and forth.
Because of incredible time constraints on my part, if you can give me a short answer, please do so. Sorry, I can't see the names. Mr. Holling.
Yeah, sorry, Simon Hollingsworth, CEO
Thank
of
you.
the Australian Sports Commission, Senator.
Ms. Hollingsworth, if you can...
Perhaps
give me a short answer.
repeat the question.
Yes, I'll repeat the question. How much government money does football get through via the FFA?
So we fund football under our high performance stream and our participation funding stream. Yep. Their current funding for participation in 2014-15 was $916,000. And for high performance, the investment is in the vicinity of $2 million. I haven't got the exact figure here, Senator.
Sorry, if you can take it on notice, that's fine. And if you can give me a comparison of, say, two or three financial years before.
The total investment is around the $3 million.
Okay, thank you. Can you very quickly explain, and if you need to go give more details on notice, I understand that, the formula for government funding for sport in Australia that results in this fairly generous funding for football? Is it based on participation rates, its status as an Olympic sport?
The funding for high performance is focused exclusively on the Olympic domain for the men and the women's game, the Matilda. So we don't fund Football Australia for the high performance program for the Socceroos. Right. So we fund the junior programs, or make a contribution to the junior programs, and we co-invest with Football Australia to produce outcomes at the Olympics, at Junior World Championships, and the Women's World Cup and the Olympics for the women. In participation, they receive funding to grow the game. We fund over 60 sports for participation, and we invest in the sports to grow their member base.
Sure, and I think you've answered about nearly $3 million for this financial year.
That's correct.
And for next financial year, approximately?
Well, our funding is, we're just going through the investment process now, and
sure.
That hasn't been finalised, but
that's fine. In relation to the, and I don't know whether this is for the department, in relation to the FFA bid for the World Cup, that's for the 2022 World Cup, and I note that on the ABC tonight, 1,200 people have died in Qatar in the building of the stadiums there. Is it the case that the Australian government gave the FFA some $45 million for the bid?
Yes, Senator. The total amount provided was $42.25 million.
Okay, I was a bit out. 42.25.
Yep.
And can you, on notice, provide details of what amounts over what financial years were these funds given?
I can, Senator. I can provide that now, if you like.
Sure.
So I have a breakdown. I have a breakdown by progress reports. I've got six different payments over the course of a couple of financial years that I can spell out for you quickly.
If you look, I think that's okay. If you want to, I'm happy for you to provide that on notice. Is that okay? I'm just trying to get through this expeditiously. What amounts over? So you can provide that. Were the government funds provided to the FFA for the World Cup bid in addition to the regular funding for football at that time?
Yes, Senator.
They were. And in those years in which the bid was funded by government, how much other money was given to the FFA for support of football besides the bid money? Was that just the regular funding, the sort of things that Mr Hollingsworth was referred to? I think he's nodding. There weren't any other funds other than the streams that Mr Hollingsworth has referred to. and the FFA and the bid money, World Cup bid money, is that right?
Senator, it's possible there were additional funds provided in those specific years. I could take that on notice and get more detail.
I'm happy with that. I'm just trying to get an overall picture. Thank you. In relation to the bid money, given that there were taxpayer dollars involved, what governance, oversight, probity or other conditions were linked to that money and how it could be spent? Is that something that is readily available in terms of the documents relating to the issues of the probity, the conditions, the oversight, the governance and the like?
Yes, I can go through that for you if you like, the process in relation to the management of that funding agreement.
Can you provide documents in respect of that as well?
There are a number of documents publicly available already, the progress reports and the final report that was released.
I don't want you to spend time on something that is publicly available. If you can direct me to that, that will be fine.
Sure.
But in terms of probity, if you can focus on probity and governance, can you just give us a quick outline of that now?
Yeah, absolutely. So the funding agreement for that for the World Cup bid contained detailed reporting requirements that included a total of 6 progress reports over the period of a couple of financial years. Those progress reports reported against budget, reported
and they're
against...
publicly available, the progress reports?
Certainly the final report is, and I will check on the other ones. And,
yes, if you could provide those as well.
Absolutely. I'll take that on notice, Senator, and check that. Reporting against agreed bid milestones, and it included detailed bid expenditure against budget line items. The department scrutinised material, had the opportunity to clarify and seek additional information, which it did on occasion. Payments were made only upon acceptance of those reports. Audited financial statements were required in financial year 9-10, and the final report included financial statements for the entire project period. They were independent audited statements for the entire project period.
Okay, so if you could on notice provide details of those progress reports if they are not already publicly available, or refer me to where they are publicly available. You've seen, Mr Smith, the reports of arrests and charges against some 14 individuals, including high-ranking FIFA officials and former officials for money laundering and embezzlement up to the $150 million, and that was the indictments issued by the US Attorney General Loretta Lynch through her office. I take it you're aware of those reports?
Yes, Senator.
You'd have had to be in the cave not to be aware of them. Are you aware of the almost $500,000 paid to CONCACAF, that is a Confederation of North, Central American and Caribbean Association Football, in 2010 by FFA, ostensibly for a stadium upgrade?
Yes, Senator, I'm aware of that.
And that's an amount of money that went to the then Caribbean Soccer Supremo Jack Warner, who is facing indictment on other charges?
Senator, that was a payment that was made by FFA out of FFA funds. My understanding is that the payment was made to CONCACAF for the upgrade of the Centre of Excellence somewhere in CONCACAF, sorry, I don't have that detail.
Trinidad and Tobago.
In Trinidad and Tobago, correct. That funding was then misappropriated once received by CONCACAF. So the payment wasn't made directly to Mr Warner, is my understanding.
Right, but insofar as, can you link those funds, were they taxpayer funds at $500,000, in the sense that it was related to the funding for the World Cup bid? There was a link between the two, was there not?
No, Senator. The $500,000 was not from the 42.25 that I outlined earlier. It was from FFA's own source funding.
Right. So you're certain about that?
Yes, Senator.
Yep, that's fine. But does it concern you in terms of broad governance issues, in that the FFA does get funding from taxpayers, ongoing funding in addition to the bid funding? Does that concern you, these allegations that the money was not spent as intended?
Senator, we're aware, Andrew Stewart, Deputy Secretary, we were aware there's some fairly fishy business associated.
That has to be the understatement of the night.
But I don't think it's appropriate for you to ask the official, Mr Smith, if he's concerned. We're here to answer questions of fact as well as we can.
Well, it is appropriate, respectfully, in the context of having probity and governance frameworks, and whether those probity and governance frameworks were in any way breached. That's a matter of fact, isn't it?
Yes, sure. What I'd like to say to you in response to that is that Jay's been able to step through the usual process.
And I'm not being critical of Mr Smith at all.
No. But no, let me finish. About the process of Australian government funding to the FFA, the process of reporting and the process of acquittal. And in my discussion with Mr Smith earlier, he's been able to tell me quite clearly that he's very satisfied about the government processes and the governance of Australian government funding to the FFA. The questions that you're asking about the payments are more appropriately addressed to the FFA.
Well, let's see about that. If I can just put this to you.
Sure.
Given that the FFA does rely on a significant degree of government funding, and I'm not critical of that at all, given that there was a significant amount of funding for the FFA in the context of the World Cup bid, which a massive amount of funds in the scheme of things, there are allegations, serious allegations, coming out of the United States about Mr Warner's use of funds, about an Australian funding of that, given that if that points to governance issues within the FFA, and I'm not being critical of the FFA, but if that points to some breakdown in governance issues or probity issues about this money, isn't that something that would set off potentially alarm bells that if they have made a mistake, I'm not saying that it was in any way deliberate, but if they have erred in the way that those funds were acquitted, does that raise broader issues in the context of how the FFA manages its finances?
Okay, I understand where you're going.
So that's the context.
Sure.
So on that basis, given the recent very serious allegations against Mr Warner and the $500,000 of Australian FFA funds, but the commingling, if you like, of federal government funding, has this matter been referred to the Auditor General or the AFP for further investigation? It either has or it hasn't.
Not by the department.
Not by the department.
Senator Chris Reid, General Counsel, you used the word commingling. I don't believe the department is aware of any evidence of commingling of Commonwealth funds with FFA funds for the purposes of these payments to CONCACAF.
Okay, but for example, will the department examine the spending of other bid money, given these allegations that money that was meant to go for something wasn't spent for that? Would that trigger an investigation by the department to say if there were governance issues in respect to that? Again, not being critical of the FFA, but given these very serious allegations that have arisen out of the US, will there be an examination, a closer examination of the spending of the $42.25 million of the bid money to ensure that it was appropriately spent in accordance with what it was meant to be spent for, because this $500,000 for the Trinidad and Tobago sporting upgrades apparently went into Mr Warner's pockets. You can see the strand in relation to that. So can you tell me whether there will be, the department will at least look at that in the context of these recent very serious allegations?
Well, that's a future-oriented question, and I don't think we're going to have a discussion within the department about whether we will or won't do that right now. But I think that.
Well, have you considered it to date? All right, let's not look at the future. I don't want to be futurist here. Let's look at the issue. Given the serious allegations, has there been consideration given to have a closer look at where the $42.25 million went? Whether in fact that some people involved in the bid process, not suggesting the FFA, have conned either the FFA and by extension Australian taxpayers.
Senator, if I could just say something at this point. The AFP has told the department that it is assessing the allegations that have been made. The department will cooperate in any process that the AFP takes part in. If there were going to be allegations as to whether Commonwealth money had gone astray and been misused, then the appropriate time to look at that would be after the AFP has done what it's going to do.
I'm nearly done. 2 minutes.
Yeah, I would remind you of your own timings.
I know.
And I'm not to be your scheduler, but
No.
you are late for
I need
another
a schedule.
committee, Senator Xenophon. So
They've given me an extra couple of minutes. 2 minutes away.
Briefly to wrap up.
I'm very grateful. If I could refer you to the Trinidad Express, I'm not suggesting that you subscribe to the Trinidad Express, their article of the 30th of May 2015, which talks about this particular donation. I'm very happy to provide you a copy of the Trinidad Express article, perhaps through the committee, in respect to that. What I'm trying to establish is this. if there was a suspect transaction involving the FFA, again, not suggesting the FFA had any direct knowledge or intent in this regard, not suggesting they breached Australian law. But if there was funny business going on there, we've heard of the allegations in terms of the bid for 2018 and 2022. Given these recent very serious allegations, the charges that have been laid, the involvement of the US Attorney General, have you considered to date, irrespective of what the Federal Police says, the yellow cards or the red cards have been raised here, we're going to look at this further? Have you looked at it further? Will you look at it further given the serious allegations?
I think, Senator, we'll need to see what comes out of the current investigations, and we will cooperate very fully with whatever investigations take place. Mr. Reid, I think, has appropriately said that we will look at and rely upon anything which is produced, but at the moment, at this particular moment, there is no chain of funding or chain of control between the federal government funding and the money which was misplaced into Mr. Warner's account.
Right.
There is no link there.
And I'll go now, but in terms of the bid money, that $42.25 million, you won't be looking at that further at this stage?
It was fully acquitted at the time, and there isn't at this point...
And you're satisfied with that acquittal?
We were satisfied with that acquittal at the time, and there is at the moment no specific allegation of any kind relating to that funding.
Okay. I'm very grateful to you. Thank you, Chair.
My pleasure. On other issues, Senator Peris.